look back in hindsight, everything is 2020. In hindsight, we make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, is so much clearer now.
Hey, welcome to Hindsight, the podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones. And today, I like to read from my script so I don't miss any words. But today I have a guest with a story unlike most. Francisco, and I call you Frank, Rios, isn't just a good friend of mine, but also a fellow veteran who served in both the Army and the Navy. But after hanging up his uniform, Frank traded combat boots for Chef White's, becoming the owner of Tano's restaurant, known for its mouth-watering Puerto Rican cuisine. And I tell you what, it is amazing. He's also a published author sharing his personal story in a book called Through My Eyes, The Loss of Jessica Guzman. It's a story about unimaginable pain, the abduction and murder of Frank's 10-year-old sister in 1990. It's a story of loss, healing, and ultimately of hope. Frank's strength and resilience are truly inspiring. Hey, Frank, good to see you again. Welcome. How's everything going with you today?
Good. Thank you for having me. Like you said, we've been friends for a while, so very proud of you and what you got going on here with Hindsight. Been following you for a minute, so I'm loving the progression.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks. Like you just said, I follow you as well with the cooking, and I can equally appreciate, the strides and in the accomplishments that you were doing as well. And so, speaking of that, I remember I was looking on Instagram and I saw that you were saying that you were the publisher. You had a book published, right? What we just talked about, and here's the book. Hopefully it doesn't get too, blurry. But it was Through My Eyes, The Loss of Jessica Guzman. And I reached out and I said, hey, Frank, knowing that you were an investigator in the Navy. And I was like, is this from a case, that you did, or is this something more personal? And you told me it was your sister who was in the book. And I was like, wow, I didn't really know what to say. One, I did tell you that I was super proud of you writing this book and getting it published because it's something that I've aspired to do and I just haven't done. But in your words, what inspired you, or what led you to write the book? When did you know that now was the time to do that?
Well, I've been wanting to write this book for a very, very long time. But with the military, marriages, it's kind of hard to. For me, it was kind of hard to put the time in. I was also going to college, trying to get my degree. So it just wasn't, there was never a good time, mentally, right. And also to be able to have the time to put into it. So about 5 years ago, I was at a good place, and I felt that it was time to write it. I think a lot of it had to do with being therapeutic. I initially had no intentions of publishing the book. It was just something to do. I felt like I needed to revisit that week to help me maybe understand a little bit more about what was going on with me in my personal life. Throughout my adulthood, I pretty much was successful in anything I put myself into when it came professionally. But personally, I've had some drawbacks and stuff like that, 2 failed marriages. And I wasn't sure if maybe, what happened, transcended throughout my life as an adult. So I wanted to revisit it. The day my sister was buried, I pretty much let it go. I told myself, okay, I'm moving forward, and it is what it is. And throughout my life, I think that's how I kind of carried myself when it came to disappointments in my personal life. And instead of processing the situation and really thinking about what went wrong and whatnot, it's not something that I would do. I would just go, okay, move forward. So I wanted to go back and revisit that whole situation to see if maybe, there was some hindsight into what took place and where I was at the time, 5 years ago, personally.
Yeah.
So
Right.
mainly therapeutic, but of course, the funny thing is, I reached out to my cousin Tanya. She's a published writer,
Okay.
and asked her if she would assist me because I didn't know anything about writing. I wasn't much one to read books that much anyway, so I didn't have a clue. And
Yeah.
she was like, "Yeah, I'll definitely help you." And she was like, "When are you looking at wanting to be done?" I said, "Well,
Right.
6 months."
Oh,
And she
wow.
gave me that bewildered look, like, "Okay, well, 6 months turns to 5 years."
Yeah.
It took me 5 years to complete the book. There's a lot that goes into it, so it was definitely a learning process, and she was awesome at helping me out.
Right. So you said you did it one as a therapeutic exercise because of some different instances and just how you approach situations in your life. So did you find that therapeutic? Did you find it helpful? And were you able to explore deeper into yourself and finding different ways to process situations differently going forward?
Yeah, I think I did. I think I learned uh, a little bit more about myself. I what I definitely learned was that I still was holding on to those emotions, and while writing the book, I reprocessed that whole situation, and obviously I'm a lot older, so I was able to really like think about those 7, 10 days and
Yeah.
how things transpired as opposed to before. I just never thought about it. I didn't want to think about it. So
Right.
it forced me to really like dive into to things that I should have been processing back then when I was
Right.
18.
Right.
So
So explain, and you can tell me to, pump my brakes on some of the questions, right? But explain how that day started off for you. And I know you got it in the book, but I encourage people to go out and get the book. It's a great read, and a horrible story, but you did an amazing job at writing that story. But how did that morning start off for you? Or how did that day start off for you?
just like
And
any
and then
other,
just and then just walk us through that day. Absolutely, when you found the news out.
yeah, just like any other morning, got up uh, to go to school. I started my senior year of high school, um, and I wanted to go get a new pair of shoes for
Mm,
school. I went to
yeah.
Rice High School, which was a Catholic high school, all male, and so I
And
contacted.
this was in the Bronx, right? Where was this
Yeah, this
at?
is in the Bronx. The high school I went to was in Harlem, 124th Street,
It
Malcolm
was in
X
Harlem.
Boulevard.
Okay.
But
Okay.
me and my friend John Paul, who's my best friend, I wanted to go get new shoes. So that day was a half day, and he wasn't in school anymore. But he went with me, and we went down to Manhattan, buy some shoes. Pretty excited about the start of the school year because it was going to be my last year of high school. So I was pretty excited about that. Because
Yeah.
of course, I wasn't sure what I was going to do after that, if I was going to go to college or whatnot. But yeah, I was pretty excited. So it was a good day. It was a nice day in October, and we went downtown, did what we had to do. We came back. I think I got back about, I'm gonna say it's about 6:30 or so, and we lived in the Castle Hill projects in the Bronx,
Mm,
and we lived on the sixth floor. So got up to the sixth floor, and the building is like shaped like a Y. So when you get off the floor, the sixth floor, you have apartments on your left and your
yeah.
right, and then behind you, and there's 6 apartments on each side. So you're looking at what 18 apartments on one floor.
Right.
So I get home, I open the door, and as soon as you open the door to the apartment, we were facing the kitchen, and my mom's in the kitchen. And she just calls me over, and she's like, "Hey, Jesse's not home. I need you to go over to Home Avenue and bring her home." And her curfew was 5:30. She had to be home. Back in those days, it's not like today with video games and the streets is where we hung out at, and everybody knew everybody. So it wasn't abnormal for a 10-year-old to be hanging out in the streets. Back in those days when the street lamps went on, that's when you knew you had to go home.
That's when you go in, right? I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, there were no cell phones or anything like that. Everything was, old school, for those who can relate. But, I can tell that she was worried because it wasn't like my sister to not be home on time.
Right.
And my dad, he was in the living room, so she said it to me quietly because she didn't want him to know that she hadn't made curfew.
Right.
So I said, not a problem. Went over to Home Avenue, and she wasn't there, and her friend said that she left like at 5:15 or whatnot. So that kind of
about what time? About what time was it then?
It was about by the time I got over there, it was probably about 6:30, 6:45.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
Pushing 7 o'clock. It was already dark. So we're getting dark, but the minute they said that she had went home, I knew something was wrong. So going back to my place, my apartment, my parents' apartment, I kind of like walked slowly because I really was trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? Where else can I go? And unfortunately, is one of the things that really hit me hard that week was the fact that I didn't know my sister the way I felt I should have known her. Because I couldn't even remember what she was wearing.
Right.
That morning, I was so involved in myself and senior year of high school and other things. But it was something that really like bothered me. And before I even got home, before I even got out of the block, my parents were already coming down. So my mom had told my father. My father obviously asked, where's she at?
Yeah.
So they asked me if I found her, and I said, well, no. They said that she left earlier, like around 5 o'clock, 5:15. She was heading back home. She knew that she had to be home at 5:30. So I can tell my mom's face. She started to look worried. My father was behind her. And, they told me to go over to Story Avenue, which is another block.
Right.
Probably about 8 blocks away, which kind of far for where the project was at, to see if she was over there, that she had some friends there. So I said, okay. Yeah. So I went over there. She wasn't there. And, the walk back home, that was like the worst thing, because I'm like, how do I go back home and tell them she's not there? They haven't seen her.
Right.
But once I got home, which was probably 8 o'clock, by the time I got home, they had already called the police, and there was a police officer there, and they were talking to my parents. And when that happened, everything just seemed to like go so quickly.
Right.
2 police officers to 10. By morning they had a command center, outside of the project, which was surprising for me, considering us being Hispanics, minorities. I really didn't expect the police to be as responsive as they were that night.
Right. Now, in the book, you said she was abducted by a serial killer, right?
Yes.
So was all the kill, and if right, and I don't want to be insensitive or anything like that, but were all his killings in that area? In the Bronx, yeah.
Yeah. There were 6 victims. And the one
You,
thing that connected all the victims
yeah,
to include my sister was this individual, Alex Enriquez.
right,
Uh, they all knew him, and he was somebody that frequented the neighborhood. Good
right.
looking guy, uh, but he would say he was a cop. He had a cab service,
Mm,
and you know, victims ranged from 21 to as young as my sister, 10 years old. And even one of his relatives was one of the victims that he was actually found
wow.
guilty of. So, and this was all in a period of, I think it was from like 1988 to 1990. So it's a
Mm.
2 year period where these victims were kidnapped and murdered.
So in hindsight, just looking at how your family first of all had to deal with this this horrible, this tragic situation, did it fracture your family a little bit? In hindsight, looking back, just looking at you now and following you on Instagram and then just talking to you, I know you're super close to your family, right? I see all the photos and stuff. But how did that impact your family dynamic?
I think it's kind of weird, like we all had our own way of dealing with it. You know,
Yeah.
I focused on school,
Hmm. Hmm.
graduating high school and trying to figure out my life. And my older brother, he had wasn't living at the house anymore, somewhat. But and my younger brothers, they were young. They were 14 and 12 or something like that.
Hmm.
So they they found solace on the streets,
Yeah.
and my parents, they had each other. I think it brought us together, but not, it didn't break us apart.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
want to
Good.
say, it
Right.
didn't
Right.
break us apart, but we've all dealt with it in our own way. And I think the ones who were affected the most long term was probably my younger brothers.
Yeah.
And I was older, so I had avenues to walk to be able to deal with it. But my way of dealing with it was just shutting it out.
Yeah.
I just let it go. It didn't at the time. I didn't see any point in thinking about it. She wasn't going to come back. I didn't see any point in going to the trial. After he was arrested,
Right.
I just but they did. Obviously my parents and my brothers, they all went, but for me, I just didn't see the point.
And how long after Jessica's disappearance was he found or captured?
I think he was arrested probably a couple of weeks after. He was already a target. The minute
Right.
his name came up, they already was like, okay, it's him. And
Yeah.
because of the other murders, he
It
was
was just
connected.
yeah, just a matter of finding him at that point.
Yeah, so they were already looking at him, already talking to him. He did the typical thing that a lot of killers do, serial killers do. They interject themselves in the investigation.
Yeah.
He was in the media talking. He even actually went to a couple of candlelight visuals
Really.
that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you know,
Yeah. How long did it take for you as a family, and maybe you didn't, right, to talk about it? To talk about, because obviously you had that week, right, because it was happening. But after finding out and the court and all that, did everyone shut it out and it just wasn't a conversation? How did you go about that?
It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a
Yeah,
conversation for me. I can honestly say that I don't recall us ever sitting down together
yeah,
and talking about it until I started to write the book. And that's like probably one of the first times me and my mother had an in-depth conversation about the book, because there was a lot of things that I remembered, but there were a
yeah.
lot of things that I didn't remember. It was 30 years ago
30 years ago.
when I
Yeah.
started to write the book. It was going on 30th anniversary
Mm,
of her murder.
right.
So there was a lot that I couldn't recall. There was a lot that I recall, but wasn't sure if it was accurate.
Yeah.
Um, so I did do a lot of talking with her, a lot of talking with my friend John Paul, because he was there,
Yeah.
throughout the week, being there for me as a friend.
Right.
So I talked to other people who were there at the time, just to, get clarity. But
Hmm.
prior to writing the book, it's something that I really never really talked about.
And how receptive was your mom to offer up some of those missing details?
Oh,
You
she
know?
was very receptive.
Yeah.
She understood why I was doing it. And like I said, when I first started, there was no really intention of publishing the book.
Okay.
But with talking with her, one of the things that we acknowledged was that, a lot of times when you're looking at the news and there's a murder, especially dealing with a child, it's
Triggers.
always the parents you see,
Yeah.
and you know, I kind of realized that what I was wanting to do was shed some light on what the siblings go through,
Right.
because you always see about the mom and the
Yeah.
dad, and
Yeah.
they're always on TV and they're crying. You don't
Right.
ever see, the brothers or the sisters and what they're going through. So, because I really didn't know what angle the book was going to go. Um, I didn't want it to be about me,
That
but
was
the reality was that it was about me. And that was one of the things that I had to
right.
accept. My cousin helping me out. I was trying to do everything to steer it away from me, and the reality was I was writing a book not about my sister, but
Right.
about what happened with me and how I
Right.
dealt with those days prior
Yeah.
to her being
Yeah.
found. So it was something that I felt
Hopefully
other,
helped you.
yeah,
Hopefully
it
it helped
did,
you out a
and
bit.
I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, I thought that it would help other siblings who have gone through similar situations
Yeah.
or might go through similar situations, to see that even though the situation is tragic, you can overcome it and you can
Right.
move on and continue forward in life. So there was probably by year two of writing the book, probably like the second draft, there was more
Hmm.
clarity as to what it was, and I accepted the fact that the book was actually about me
Right.
and not about anything else. I mean, obviously it's about what happened, but more so what happened to me, hence the title, Through My Eyes.
Right. From your perspective. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that was extremely important because I knew everyone else had their own
Hmm.
experience,
Right.
and one of the things that I was concerned with was offending someone else, my brothers,
Yeah.
my mother, and being concerned about not getting certain things right. And my cousin said, at the end of the day, this is through your eyes.
Mm.
So there's no wrong or right.
Right.
Everyone else has their own role. I had my own role. She was 8 years old, and her and my sister were very close.
Right.
They were like best friends. So, she says, you're going to remember things your way.
Yeah.
Your brother's going to remember the same situation, but a different
Right.
way. Can't
Yeah.
be worried about what anybody else is going to think. So it kind of made me more at ease and not so concerned
Yeah.
about who's going to think what.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think you know, like I said, you did a great job in the writing part, and it's interesting that it took you 5 years. And it's also interesting. And these are it's interesting to me because, like I said earlier, I would like to write a book as well, right? And I have the ideas and the things you know that I want to write about, but it's difficult to find that direction or that perspective or point of view or where you want to start or where you want to end. And the way you just took each chapter and made it a day, you know, of that experience, I thought was very you know, all the words that come, it just seems like it does a disservice because I'll say clever or something like that, right? It's like clever when you're writing a book like this. But I think it does lend some inspiration to others who have gone through this. And I think you said that was part of your intent, you know, some siblings that have gone through things like this. And you definitely did them a service in sharing your story. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, you walk around and we make quick judgments on people a lot of times, right? Because you see things based off of your experiences in life and you make a quick judgment, right? But what I always try to say and what I really try to think about now is that you never know what someone is going through or what someone has been through. So when you said that to me, you know, just based off of our relationship, um, it really took me back like Jesus, you know, because you're such a positive person, you know, you're always smiling and I mean, you're serious, right? But, you know, you always had a pleasant demeanor about you, you know, especially when we hung out, you know, having a beer or, you know, at your house, having a party or something like that. It was always a good thing. And when that came up, like that was the furthest thing from my mind, right? On something that you could have possibly experienced in your life. So what and like I told you earlier, like I have no standard questions. Usually I'll go in and I'll have some questions going forward. So right now it's just me coming from the heart, just asking you some questions. So you can offer some stuff too if I'm not asking the questions you're hoping that I'm going to ask you, right? But I'm really interested because you talked about you had two failed marriages and you had, I guess, other maybe relationship issues, right? And you kind of connecting, not completely connecting, but there's some connection on that experience for you, right? So
Yes.
when you go in hindsight and look back on these different relationships you had that just didn't work, what is your, and you don't have to get too personal, what is your take on maybe your responsibility just based off of this burden that you were holding over yourself?
Well, I think I treated anything that was personal
Yeah.
in my life that would bring some some sense of sadness or heartbreak.
Mm,
I would treat it the way I treated, my sister's death. I knocked it out of my head
right.
and I said, I'm just going to move forward. And instead of
Right.
working the process and finding out, like with my marriages,
Mm-hmm.
instead of fighting to make it work or whatever the case may be, a lot of times it was just, okay, well, it is what it is, move forward.
Mm,
And I wouldn't give myself that time to process. I would just go into another relationship or whatever the case may be. And I
mm-hmm.
don't think it was anything with not wanting to be alone. I think I just, I my thought process was okay. Well, next, move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
hold on to that emotion?
Right.
Just let just let it go.
Right.
And a lot of people would consider me cold-hearted in a sense because you know my emotions weren't as a typical emotion that most people would have when a
Yeah.
relationship ends or whatnot. And I think now to this day, I'm still that way,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I am mindful as to me needing to process, you know, situations,
Right.
just like I needed to process her death and her death wasn't a typical death. It wasn't like she died of an accident or anything like that. You know, someone took her life.
Right.
So that's something that, you know, requires some serious processing, you know, and, you know, one of the reasons why the book took so long for the book to write was because I needed to stop a
Mm-hmm.
few times and just not walk away from it, but I needed to stop, take a step back, and then
Right.
process what I had just written.
Right.
You know, there are things that came up in the book that I totally forgot about until I started writing the book. With the there's a portion of the book towards the end
Mm-hmm.
um, involving the old man in the church,
Okay.
and I totally forgot about that until I
Yeah.
got to that section. You know,
Right.
and to be totally honest, with you, I don't even know if that was real. I don't even know if he was real.
Mm.
You know,
Wow.
he came at a pivotal time that week. You know, it's the first time that I see the coffin. So, you know, and I was, you know, going through all kinds of emotions. And, you know, he came at a time where I needed that reassurance, I guess, from God and
Yeah.
how I was
Yeah.
feeling with not understanding why this happened. You know,
Right.
and here I am in church, and my sister's in church, and you know, so it was a lot of confusion,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of I don't want to say anger towards God, but disappointment. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Understandable. Yeah.
you know, I think those that was like the first time I really sat down
Mm-hmm.
with nobody around me and really just took in what I was seeing, which was her coffin. Um, the rest of the week, you know, I
Mm.
was expected to do this and help out this, and you know, I kind of got thrown
Yeah.
into this leadership role um, at 18 years old and trying to do the things that my parents would have done and do
Mm-hmm.
it for them because you know they were home, you
Right.
know, they were grieving and whatnot. So I
Right.
kind of had to step up and be the true big brother and look out for my brothers and anyone else that came. You know,
Mm.
it was kind of it was a surreal situation. You know, I didn't have
Yeah.
the opportunity to to cry and all that stuff. You know, until they found her.
Right. Wow. So you know, taking all of that to just take that experience out of the equation, right? You being a man, right, from the Bronx, um, and uh, in the military, Navy, the Army, you know, some of the characteristics or some of the way that we handle situations kind of resembles what you said. You kind of dismiss it, right, for your own sanity, right? So you can continue on with the mission, right? You can't just harbor or just hang on to these things. You got to keep moving forward, right? So when I think of all the things that you've accomplished, because you had a pretty good, pretty good. That's not a good word. You had a well decorated experience in the military, right? And you retired from the military honorably, and knowing you had that as well, like how I'm getting into your business now. All right. How hard, like how hard were you on the women? I mean, and not abusive or anything, but more maybe mentally, right? Because just not giving anything. And I'm asking obviously for personal reasons because I know I keep a lot of stuff, a lot of emotions inside, and it's things that I feel, but then I gotta kind of just close down, right, for my own self. So, what is your experience in that? And like I said, every question I ask, you don't have to, but I'm
Oh
trying to
no,
make the connection. You know, the book, the experience, right, and then the other side of that, right? How we
right.
process stuff and hope. Go ahead.
Well, I think I don't think it was so much being hard
Mm-hmm.
on them as opposed to being hard on myself.
Okay.
Because I'm I'm a pretty happy guy, very positive.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
You know, and I frown on negativity.
Hmm.
You know, and I think whenever something would go wrong, the blame was always on me.
Okay.
You know, and but the one of the issues was like, yeah, I felt like it was my fault, but I never would say, okay, what did I do? How did we get to this place? You know,
Hmm.
what did I do to contribute to the unsuccess of a relationship? You
Right.
know, and I think a lot of it had to do with, you know, not being able to do more. Well, I felt like I didn't do enough
Hmm.
those 7 days, you know.
Right.
And what could I do? I was freaking 18 years old,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you know, I got little brothers. You know, am I doing enough for them? You know,
Yeah.
and these are questions I would never ask myself afterwards. You know, professionally, yeah, I want to strive, I want to succeed. You know, make
Hmm.
money, but at the time, for me, personal things, the only thing I was losing was emotion.
Right.
So to prevent me from losing that emotion, I would just let it go and move forward, and I guess create new ones and not
Hmm.
really look at what was going on in my life. You
Gotcha.
know, and I think you know, my partner, she read the book, and you know, she even told me, she was like, I understand you more now
Yeah. Yeah.
after
Absolutely.
reading the book. You know, so it's been because we've had our issues, and
Hmm.
a lot of it, well, most of it, um, is dealing with, you know, it was me, but again, not failing to sit back and really like understand what it was I was doing, the lack of this or the lack of that.
Hmm.
But her reading the book, she was able to understand why I dealt with certain things a certain way,
Right. I
you know,
got you.
which is the reason why, you know, the book was therapeutic, you know, because there were times where I cried,
Hmm.
you know, there were times where I got angry, and there were times where I didn't want to finish it
Yeah. I bet.
because I didn't want to address certain things. You know, there's a portion in the book that talks about my father and his alcoholism,
Hmm.
and that's something that I didn't want to even approach because, again, I was concerned that I would upset, you know, my brothers, or
Right.
you know, my mother, my sister now, you know, so you know, but my cousin, you know, she said that, you know, you have to approach that situation that way because
Right.
that's the reality, you know,
Okay.
and you don't want to take anything out because the people who knew you or knew your family, they'll read
Hmm.
it and they'll be like, oh, you making it sound like you guys were, you know, glory or glory family. So I
Yeah.
understood, you know, and there's other things that probably should have been in the book that I just chose not to put it, but I did address it
Yeah.
personally. You know, I did address it personally. I just, you know, certain things I chose not to put in the book. Um, but
Yeah.
again, it helped me to really look at that situation and look at my life and how
Right.
it's been. And it's good. I mean, I've lived a great life, you know, and I think a lot more now about Jessica. You know,
Hmm.
she would have been, see, I'm 52, so she would have been like,
40.
she would have been in her 30s.
Okay.
It's a long time, but she would have been a grown woman. You know, she
Yeah.
probably would have been married, had
Yeah.
kids. So you know, you think about those things, and you know, it makes you sad,
Yeah.
obviously, because
Right.
you know, and it's things that I never thought about.
Hmm.
Um, until I started to write the book that, you're like, damn, only 10 years old, and she was a sweetheart, a little bit of a tomboy.
Yeah.
And, she grew up in a house full of brothers,
Mm-hmm.
so she was tough in her own way.
Yeah.
But it's just sad because you think about what she could have been, her contribution to life. And,
Right.
it's sad, But, you look at that and then you look at yourself and ask yourself, what have you contributed to life? So I think although her death was sad and tragic,
Mm-hmm.
it actually, right word, motivated me
Okay.
to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
so that way she can be proud of me.
Yeah. Good.
So
Yeah.
and but yeah, I think and I'm hoping that whoever reads this can take something out of it, that they can appreciate, especially when it comes to your siblings.
Right.
And then for anyone who's had this experience, to know that they're not alone and that, they have a voice as well. And I guess the
Dang,
book was my
Frank.
voice.
You're getting to me before I can get to my questions. All right. So I know I
My
said I
bad.
didn't write any questions down, but I got some questions. Now, what I was going to say was I purposely didn't ask a lot of questions about the book because I do encourage, people to go out and get the book and read it. And you kind of answered it a little bit, but what can someone, expect? Or what do you hope a reader would get out of your story, you sharing your story?
Well, funny thing about the book is that whenever someone emails me and they say, "Oh, I purchased your book. I'm looking forward to reading it," you know, I
Mm-hmm.
I find myself wanting to say, "Well, I hope you enjoy the book," but it's probably not
Yeah.
the right phrase, So I started, I tell people I hope you get something out of it,
Right.
because I think it's a sad book. There's nothing happy about it, but I think as you go on and you read the book, you know, you see this 18-year-old kid, you know, stepping
Mm-hmm.
up for his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially if somebody young reads the book,
Right.
they can get out of it that, when it comes to family, you know, regardless of how old you are, you can still, you know, be a contributing factor in your family during a tragedy like that. My two younger brothers, I don't even know, you know, where their thought process was.
Yeah.
They're out there looking for her with the search parties. They're little kids,
Yeah.
you know, and I can only imagine, and I've said it in the book a number of times, I can only imagine what was going through their heads because I know what was going through my head,
Mm-hmm.
and it, it, but to see them, step up in their own way,
Right.
was an eye opener. It just goes to show
Mm-hmm.
how strong, you can be and how strong your family can be, during situations like that. And I mean, I wouldn't wish that for anyone, but at least be able to know through reading the book that
Right.
you can find strength in the most tragic situation and to
There
be
you
able
go.
to, protect, do for your family, move on, because it's
Mm-hmm.
very important to be able to move on.
Yeah.
I've had friends who, taking their life, you know,
Right.
they felt they couldn't move on, so it's just one of those things like, no matter how hard things are, you can move on. You know,
Yeah.
if you love your family, you can move on. And I think this book can help people realize that times might be tough, might not be able to pay your bills, but
Yeah.
those are all just, temporary situations, and if you can move forward and keep trucking,
Mm.
you know, you'll survive.
Yeah, I was thinking that exact sentiment, right? You may not have gone through something as horrendous or something as tragic as this, right? But we all go through things. And there's another side. There's the other side of those things. So that's a very important message to just keep pushing forward. However whatever you need to do, and I'm not saying drugs or anything like that, right? But whatever you need to do to get through it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because there's the other side of it, and like I said, this is a harder conversation than I thought. But I'm really glad that you came on the show to talk about your book. Um, so I asked a few questions, probably like one or two. But is there anything that I didn't ask, or is there anything that you'd like to bring up that we haven't discussed already?
I guess, well, read the book, and, I do have a website that's in the process right now where people can come and communicate with me. It's not up yet. Um, but I think,
Read the book.
if yeah, if you people can contact me if they want. Because I think a lot of times people don't have people that they can talk to
Mm-hmm.
that could be understanding. It's one thing to be listening to someone's situation.
Yeah.
It's another thing to be able to relate.
Yep.
And a situation like losing a loved one and tragically,
Mm-hmm.
not everybody goes through that. So you can empathize, but you know, to be able to truly understand,
Yeah.
what it is to lose a brother or sister, or mother or father,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, son, daughter, through this type of tragedy, it can be rewarding for that person because a lot of people, and I give kudos to my mother and my father,
Yeah.
because I don't know how I would be if my daughter was kidnapped and murdered.
Yeah.
I and that was their only daughter. So
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, that is a strength that you know personifies like the most you know the most you can bring out of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to moving on and surviving.
Yeah.
She was, my sister's gone, but my parents still had to deal with four boys.
Yeah.
And I, I give them my my most because of what they did for us.
Right.
And my mom, she's still alive. And my father passed away a while back, and he even went through his changes and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Of
But
course.
it's an experience that you don't want anyone to go through because
Right.
it's one thing dying of old age or dying of sickness, but to have your life taken away at such a young age,
Yeah.
it's definitely something that it's hard to weather sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has their own experience on how they weather those kind of storms.
Yeah.
And as family, all you can do is be there for each other, um, and keep each other tight. And we did in our own way.
Good.
We all had our own ways of
Yeah.
dealing with it and the experience that we went through, but we were together.
Cool. So where can our viewers, our listeners, where can they get the book at?
It's available on Amazon,
There you go.
so you can get it on Amazon. They have it. It's on hardcover, paperback and ebook.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Ebook.
Yeah. Oh, they got like Kindle and stuff like that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think it's an
and
ebook.
it's also on Barnes and Nobles. So we just type it through my eyes, Loss of Jessica
Mm-hmm.
Guzman. It'll pop up. Um, we are looking at probably going to an audio book for
Oh
those
wow.
that
Who's gonna
are
read it?
blind. Huh?
Who's gonna read the book? Who's gonna be the voice?
Oh, who's gonna read it? Well, these days they have like all these voice samples.
I know they got AIs and they got actual people, and they can do it that way. I just thought, maybe you was gonna throw your voice on there to give that
I wasn't even
perspective.
given that option. A little disappointed.
Oh, really? They got all these crime shows based off of real life, shows. I would be looking forward to seeing this happen on Netflix. I think it's a tragic story, but a story that could be told, right? Because so many people were innocent to certain things, right? You're not on the lookout. It's just like us being in the military, right? And you out somewhere. There are things you have to have situational awareness about things, and at 10 years old, you don't have that, right? Um, so maybe it's something from the story that could key a parent to kind of give some of that situational awareness, or for them to be, whatever it is, something can be learned from it. 1990s, man, we didn't have anything like we got today, as
No.
far as video and all this stuff. Like it was cool. And I remember, I was from Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore. I didn't stay there long. Probably I moved out when I was 14 years old. But you're comfortable in the streets. I wasn't as comfortable, but you're comfortable in the streets because that's where you are, and the people, and everything seems fine, right? But then you don't always have that awareness of the person lurking, or the trickster who's going to come up and say, "Hey, have you found my dog?" All of these different things. Now they kind of know, right? But to my point, this story, it really broke my heart. It really broke my heart. One, just what happened, and then two, that I know you, and it happened to you, to your family, right? It really broke my heart. So I'm really hoping and praying that blessings come out of this project that you're doing. First, it starts with the book, audio book. Hopefully, we get a series, and hopefully, it touches people to get a better understanding of the evil that's out there, right? And hopefully it's something in there can help someone either with avoiding that evil or with dealing with tragedy once it happens. So that's my hope. So continued success with the project and everything that comes from it. You're a great person. I loved you. I said I loved you. I love you, man. We have some good times together. I haven't seen you in a while, and I
Yes, we
do
did.
I do need to come down your way so I can get at least an autograph on this book or something, and get a
I'm here.
photo and get a photo op. We'll meet in the middle. Damn it, you live too far
There
down.
we go.
You live too far down south. But how can people get in touch with you? You said you were working on a website. Do you have any other way people can get in touch with you? Maybe
I
they're
have an
having some
email.
questions. Yeah.
Okay, I got it now. So the email is
Write down.
through my eyes 2024 at gmail.com.
Through my eyes 2024
2024 at
at
gmail.com.
gmail.com. All right.
So yeah, so I mean, people can email me if they want to, just ask a question or, anything like that. They're more than welcome to. Again, I have a website that's the company that helped me with publishing the book is creating for me, where you'll be able to go on there, see some pictures and stuff like that,
Right.
and you'll be able to, provide a response or, send an email, do that as well. It'll go to my email. But yeah, I want people to, if they feel that they, want to talk about something that they went through,
Yeah.
and if it helps with me listening, obviously I'm available, for that. So,
Right. Now,
but
if
I
you
know,
if you're out there, you're listening, and you're really going through it, right, and you want to talk to somebody, you're feeling like you're going over the edge. Make sure you reach out to the proper people, right, to get some help. But Frank's not a therapist, but he has gone through some stuff, right? So he has a perspective that a lot of us don't have on certain things. So make sure. Bottom line is, I just want everybody to take care of themselves mentally, right? Make sure you get the help that you need. And if you just need an ear to hear it out, Frank's there for you I wrote it down, throughmyeyes2024@gmail.com. It's going to get you a direct link to him, and he'll reach out to you. I guess that's accurate. Am I accurate? I'm putting the pressure on you. Is it going to be? All right. What's some final words you got for us, Frank, before we close this out?
Just buy the book, read it.
Buy the book.
It is. If you are an emotional person, it will take you on a emotional roller coaster. But I think if you really look at what the story is about, you'll gain some appreciation to the strength of love in a family. I think at the end of the day, the book's about strength. It's about family, and it's about surviving as a family, and that you can't survive, through the most tragic loss.
Right. Absolutely. Hey, Frank, thanks for coming on the show and talking to us. Go out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go out, get the book. It's worth the read, right? Even if you haven't gone through a tragedy, right? I really encourage you to go out and get this book. It's easy to get. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, so it's no problem. And you can, what do you say? It's an ebook too, so you can get it on your Kindle. Yes. You can get it on your Kindle. You can get it on all those different platforms. So, Frank, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story with us, and being so open. Like I said, I purposefully didn't ask a lot of questions about what was in the book because I want you, the listener, to go out and get the book and read it for yourselves, and then tell us, how you felt about it. Leave some notes in the comments, right? I'll make sure that if Frank's not, if he's not on there looking at the comments, I'll make sure that I pass it on to him as well. But you got his email too. So thanks again, Frank. And
thank you.
I appreciate everyone for joining me on Hindsight the podcast. We out.
Take care.
Before we even get going, in case you say something funny, then I can put it in the blooper reels, right? The experience and all that. Part of writing the book, part of just we'll just make it. I'm not even gonna. I didn't even prep any questions. It's just two friends talking. You feel me? But it's. They said it's shingles, so I've been taking a medication for that, and hopefully it gets rid of it.
Ow. Trying to do it where it's more. Okay. That's better.
Are you good?
Kind of like an angle.
We out.